word tattooed on my left wrist. That's something fairly new. You'll understand why here in a second. This actually happened to me, by the way. There's some embellishment here and there, but it happened just a few weeks ago in North Carolina. The story of Moore. In the capital of corporate greed, a Walmart customer turned and stared at my wrist. She was an older woman in her late 70s, so when she scrunched her nose, I couldn't tell if it was because she couldn't see or she didn't approve. Turned out to be the latter. She looked from the courier-type tattoo on my wrist and scowled. "More?" she croaked. I smiled brightly, turned my wrist so that she could see it better, and said, "Yes, ma'am." She clucked her tongue and made a psst sound, and she looked away. I wasn't sure I cared for the psst sound. It sounded like a rejection to me, and I actually felt a touch of anger flare up in my chest. Grandma and I were going to get it straight here. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned slightly, now seemingly having dismissed me to the gates of hell from the looks of it. "Is there something wrong?" I asked. "Does your mother know that you feel that way?" Confused, I asked, "What way is that?" Pointing to my tattoo, she says, "That way." There was a serious ice in her voice. Too many younger people are motivated by greed, and here you went and had it tattooed on your arm so you didn't forget. Psst. There's that sound again. I took a deep breath and I smiled. Well, I guess you may be partially correct. Greed is greed. It's a sin. Read the Bible. I understand, ma'am, and I have read my Bible. You know what passage I cling to? She shook her head. "A man shall leave his parents and cling to his wife's bosom." I don't know the chapter, the verse, or even how accurate my depiction is, but I really like it. She stepped up to the cashier. It was her turn to begin checking out. "Ma'am, you seem interested. May I continue to speak while you pay?" "Yes, I'd like to see where this is going." "Excellent. So first I must say my wife and I began dating at the age of 15. We got married at 18, not because we had to, we wanted to. Actually, want is weak, we needed to. We loved each other so much and had seen friends and classmates die in car accidents that robbed them of being together forever. Not us, we were getting married. She had paid for her groceries and stood waiting at the end of the line while I made my purchase. I was the last in line, so we stood right there at the checkout and continued to talk. Early on, we tried to outdo one another in the love department. She looked aghast, her hand at her throat. "Sexually?" I laughed. "Well, I suppose so, but that's not what I mean. We would say 'I love you' whenever we left somewhere, whenever we finished a phone call, and whenever we could, really. We still do. Because you never might know when that might be the last thing that's ever said between the two of you. We made that decision together to always say it, always. But our competitiveness led to one of us saying, 'I love you more.' Then the battle was on. It was always, 'I love you more.' Somewhere along the line, we shortened it to just more. And it has served us well." Her scowl had softened, but I could see that she still hadn't improved. "That's really sweet. There's still a silly idea to have a word tattooed on your wrist." "Oh, well, that's because that isn't the reason." "You told me all that, and that's not even the reason? I'm very confused." I pointed to a bench over by the wall. I said, "If you've got a few minutes, maybe we can sit down and finish." She did, and I noticed the cashier came to the end of her line and stood there. She smiled and said, "If you don't mind, I couldn't help but overhearing. I need to know." Sure, yeah, whatever. So I sit down and I face the old woman. At 38 years old, I had a massive heart attack. I nearly died. The 6 years or so after were pretty stressful, filled with doctor's visits, surgeries, gaining strength, memory, etc. My wife was there through it all, doing more than her share to raise a family and take care of a household. "That must have been hard on your lives, being so young and having something like that," she said. It was. But what we didn't know as it wouldn't be the scariest time. Just a few years ago, I had the flu really bad one spring, and it just seemed to linger. Lots of high fevers. Mostly I tried to push through, but after a few months, I began to notice some other things. I lost my balance and I became very forgetful. Those happen with age, she laughed. That's what I tried to tell myself too, until one night I was in a Walmart just like this, but I couldn't remember why I was there. I spent an hour walking the entire store looking for my wife. I couldn't find her. Do you know why? She shook her head. I said, that's because I was in a Walmart in Kansas City. I was on a trip, and I didn't remember that I was. I just knew that I was at Walmart. So those things started to get a bit scary, but then it got worse. Your heart? She asked in concern. I could safely assume the judgmental attitude was gone. No. Well, we weren't sure, I guess. I kept falling, and then I noticed my right fingers were numb. If I sat still long enough, I seemed to have a small tremor in my hands. And then the stuttering began. Stuttering? She was really getting into this now. Yes, I couldn't get certain words out at all. And then add in the increased memory loss, well, it was ugly. We sat silent for a moment while it all sunk in. So you put more on your wrist for, I still don't, I'm sorry. I smiled. Don't be, because I still haven't told you yet. That was all background. When I was beginning recovery from Guillain-Barré syndrome, I was out trying to write in our family room. We had a small home, and I could see my wife in the kitchen trying to do the dishes. I happened to look at just the right moment and noticed she was crying. I got up without my cane and attempted the 2 steps up into the kitchen. I believe I fell down, if I remember right. It was commonplace anymore. She saw I was fine and tried to hide the tears. Poor thing, she didn't want you to worry. No, she didn't. I asked her why she was crying. She just stood there silent for several minutes, making the face I knew she made right before she had a total breakdown. I put my hand on her shoulder and I asked again, why are you crying? And the dam broke. She burst into tears. Why? The old woman gasped. She said through her tears, don't forget me. Don't forget us. It was more pleading than a statement. It brought me to tears. By this time, the old woman has tears in her eyes, and so does the cashier. I promised my wife that there was no way I could ever forget us. I did pretty well for a long time, until I began to notice I was forgetting things here and there again. Nothing major, but still enough to cause concern. A few times when I went on trips, I forgot to put my wedding ring on. So the whole trip I was missing her and didn't even have a wedding ring to turn between my fingers and think of her. And then it hit me. The tattoos? Yes, the tattoos. We had always joked about getting them. Now I thought it was a good idea to do it. To get the word more on there, so at a glance, I can be reminded of all our memories together, and I can hear her voice in my mind saying she loved me. The old woman looked at my wrist, shaking her head. The tears were now flowing down her cheeks. That font is taken from a typewriter that my wife and I picked up together for my collection. One of the few that she was there for, and a machine that will still be with me until I die. So I wanted my more to be taken from that machine. That's sweet. What's hers? You both got them, right? Yes. She had me write the word more out. I wrote it about 20 times on a sheet of paper, and they were able to take the one she liked best and put it on her wrist. There's no doubt it's my handwriting. She shook her head slowly. I owe you an apology. For what? For assuming the word more meant you weren't satisfied with what you have, that you were greedy. I grinned. But I am greedy, ma'am. I'm very greedy. I want more time to love her, more time to laugh with her. I want more I love you kisses in the rain. I want more moments where we hold hands in the car without saying a word. I want more lying next to her until the moment I no longer take in breath. Do you see? I am just like everyone else. I am not satisfied. I am blessed, but I want more. And this more on my wrist reminds me of her love, but it also drives me to try and stay healthy, to always do the little things that creates a memory It helps me think of all the things that make her and I us. This more warms my heart when I'm on a trip and feeling lonely, because I know that somewhere she is looking at hers too. I had to pause for a moment and collect myself, as emotion was creeping up on me too. I licked my lips. These tattoos will tell one of us that we still love the other, long after the first has gone to the grave. A morbid thought, but unless we're so incredibly blessed to go together, one of us will live our last days without the other. Well, these will be a constant reminder of not the person, but the love we share. And that's why the tattoos are on our wrists. I took a deep breath and I looked around. The old lady was on the bench in front of me. The cashier stood at her lane with tears running down her cheeks. There was a manager from the store nearby with her hand covering her mouth, and she was crying. And two women stood in the cashier's line waiting to check out, both dabbing their eyes with tissues. The old woman said, "That's beautiful. I shouldn't have judged you." Smiling, I said, "It's fine." It gave me a chance to explain that things aren't always what they seem. There's a reason, a story behind all things such as this. And I showed her my wrist. She stood, hugged me, and we went our separate ways.